Okay, hello and welcome back to the River Volta Podcast. Today we have a bit of something different than what we've done the last couple times. We have a group of students from a local Saskatchewan high school here today, all from a writing club, who are going to each have a little bit of something to read for us, and then we're going to have a big discussion at the end. So, Ian, would you mind saying a little bit something else about the students too, or we can jump right in?
Yeah, so we'll be doing I'll be introducing each one. They'll answer a few questions before, they'll read a few questions after, and then we'll have a little Q&A at the end. And yeah, so the first person we have is Souren. I'm going to spotlight him right now. There you go.
Yeah.
And then yeah, Souren, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Say how long you've been writing for. Tell us what genre you love to write in. I know it's fiction, but tell us, like kind of like what genre within that fiction. And then yeah, what's an author that you love reading or that inspires you, or yeah, that you just want to throw out there for props.
Sure. Okay. So I am Souren Farimani. I've been writing, oh boy, 4.5 years, almost 5 years, I guess, since I was 12, the summer before I was 13. Yeah. I attended a writing workshop. That's how I got into it. The type of writing I like to write, it's the snobby, pretentious stuff. Philosophical fiction, literary fiction. I don't have a taste for much else. Some authors that I really like, Camus. Love Camus. He's in my heart. My heart belongs to Camus. I like Tolstoy. Tolstoy is quite good. I love his understanding of humans, of people, of emotions, of character. It's honest and it's sincere and it's genuine. It's not melodramatic. And just yesterday, I just got into 100 Years of Solitude. I forget the author's name, but it was incredible. Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah, I was gonna say Garcia as the first name, but you got it.
Yeah, Gabriel, yeah, amazing. It's so literary. It's like the prototype for literary fiction. Incredible. So that is a little bit about me.
And he's a magical realism author, isn't he? So maybe we'll get into that a little bit too. I love, like, Ian and I both love magical realism, so we might pick your brain.
Okay, sounds good.
I just read the other day Alyosha, The Pot. You read that by Tolstoy?
I haven't.
Really good short story.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, the short story about the guy who was the servant, right?
Yeah, and he's like annoyingly positive about everything.
Yeah,
and then
yeah, I did
and then
read that.
it's
Yeah.
very confusing whether Tolstoy is embracing like universal positivity or rejecting it, like embracing it based off like a Christian kind of ethics, or making fun of it or making the reader criticize it. It's unsure, and it has like a dual meaning, which is really good. Any part of a good philosophical text, I think, has both meanings at once.
Tolstoy was a moral writer, right? From what I understand, that was the point of fiction for him, make people more moral. So
anyway, whenever you're ready, Souren, and then we'll have a little quick discussion right after.
Okay, I'm just hopping into reading.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I have a short story here. It's titled Cecil. It's not the best. That's the truth. But hopefully I can improve from here, as would anybody, I think, till the end of one's life, right? So here goes. Let me know what you think. I have done nothing, frankly, for all my life, and that is the truth. But I'm only 22 and no one takes me seriously. This is what makes sense to them, and their sense is what shapes me. They call me Cecil. Of course, I've only ever tried to be honest. That sense has a hold on me. Its influence is inescapable. Each day, I check to see what parts of me it has changed in the washroom mirror. Of course, this happens to everybody, and that is that. Yesterday, I trapped myself in the washroom entirely by mistake. I was in there for an hour and a half before they got me out. I was lying on my back on the bench in the backyard, trying to remember the tune of a song. The last time the tune was playing in my head, I accidentally mixed it up with a similar sounding tune, so I couldn't remember either very clearly. The prior was a sonatina by an Argentine composer whose name eludes me. The other was an etude by Chopin. The backyard is large, not large for the country, but large for the city. The grass is not perfectly kept, and there are weeds here and there. Several skinny spruce trees have recently been planted along the fence. The fence still needs painting after it was put up 3 years ago. There are some pretty flowers by the side of the house. I don't know the flowers by name, but their colors are all very striking. One is the color of amethyst with thin rounded petals. My friend was coming over later. We hadn't planned on doing anything in particular, but our exams had just finished for the semester and we had some time off. There was something to do. A chickadee fluttered onto one of the young spruce trees in front of me. I tucked my chin in to get a better view of it. It wiped its beak on the space between the needles on the branch, then made a dreamy soprano call. It sounded like it was saying seat. It made the call again, twirled its little head right then left, and stopped. I could see it from the side, and it seemed that its eye was directed towards me. I imagined that it was watching me. We gazed at each other for a moment while there was only breeze besides the stillness. It saw me for who I am, because I am not more than what it was seeing. Seat, seat. It left after that. My friend arrived, and we both went inside. He hung up his windbreaker. We walked past the hardwood floor of the living room and each slipped into one of two couches by the TV. The couches faced each other. One was old, cloud blue sofa. One was an old cloud blue sofa, with fabric that had softened over years of wear. There were scratch marks by the ends of the couch cushions where the dog had been at it. My godfather used to reprimand the dog for that. Tell him that's not what he ought to do, but he did it anyway. And all throughout the year, you could hear the furious onset of scratching, followed by shouts coming from another room. Some silence would pass, and the scratching would begin again. In high spirits, the dog would dig away at the furniture, and my godfather usually had to come from wherever he was and yell at the dog in person for him to stop. Usually, the dog would scamper under the dinner table whining. Nevertheless, some time would pass, a week or a month, and he would go back to scratching. It was senseless. My friend was sitting on the larger, newer sofa we had bought after the dog passed away. We all felt guilty about my godfather having always yelled at him, so we kept the old couch, even though we didn't need it. My friend was telling me about his girlfriend, and we were both talking about our future. He wanted to study medicine, to go into ophthalmology. Yes, of course, no doubt. He talked about his future with confidence. He thinks he understands himself, and that he understands me, in that he believes he is impressing me. Inadvertently, he supplants his desires onto mine in the form of judgment. You didn't talk much at Christie's the other day, he said. Don't you ever want to be confident? And the next time someone asks about me, he'll tell them that I'm shy because he'll remember that most recent instance and generalize it to my character. Just like that, he creates sense and thus reinvents me. But it is not honest. So I am better than him. With all my heart, I felt this thing. He asked about me, what I wanted to do with my future. My laugh wasn't genuine. Then I ran my hand through my hair to avoid his eye. I don't know, I admitted. My career would be in art. There was a job opening at the art museum downtown that I applied to. There were always others if this one didn't work out. But my general thoughts on the future were never consistent. They were always conditional to my mood. When I am sad, my whole life stretches out before me as misery. When I am lively and content, the future runs a similar pattern. There is no truth to it, less so unrelenting motivation or spirit. I just want to remain alive if I can. Don't be so dramatic. He was laughing now. Suddenly, I wanted to be in the washroom, even though I didn't need to use it. Yes, you're right. So try again. I breathed in deeply and sat back on the couch. I really don't know. And he thought me a fool too, thought that he was better than me with all his heart. My perception of this was suffocating, so I told him I'd be going to the washroom. The washroom down the hall from the living room is the smallest in the house. There is a sink, a cabinet under the sink, a garbage can, and a toilet. Several rolls of toilet paper are stocked in the cabinet. The lock on the door is a loan button, situated slightly below the door handle. When you click it, it locks. When you pull the handle down, it unlocks on its own. In the mirror, I see myself sometimes, the real person that I am, but often I don't, and that is how it should be. That is honesty. I don't tell anyone because they would laugh at me. My friend had bothered me, but I didn't know why. I wish he had bothered me enough to justify an emotional reaction. In that way, I could prove to myself that I was truly bothered through me being angry or sad or frustrated. There was nothing. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, my mouth was a little open and I just looked confused. There were already parts of me that were shaping to his judgment. The skin on my forehead was smooth. My eyebrows were still in place. The change isn't always readily apparent. My friend was approaching the washroom and I didn't want him walking in. I reached over to the handle and pressed the button hard with my thumb. He later told me that he had only been walking over to the closet to retrieve his phone from his windbreaker. I flushed the toilet and quickly rinsed my hands. The towel was rough and needed to be washed. The door handle wasn't working. At first, I thought I wasn't pressing hard enough on it. Sometimes, when I was upset or had been laughing too hard, my body would feel so weak and frail that I couldn't grab onto a fork. It became clear after several more attempts that this was not the case. I called my friend over, but he had heard the ruckus and was already on his way. He tried the handle, then tried it harder. We tried it at the same time, nothing. With my back leaning to the wall, I sank to the floor. My feet were pressed and tilting against the cabinet in front of me. I reached into my pocket for my phone. Hey, I said, let it go. I don't want to break the door. Are you sure you don't want me to bust this thing open? I'm almost certain I could do it. And he put emphasis on the word certain. No, don't break the door. Too much cost to repair, too little privacy for too long. I dialed my godfather 3 times. He always left his phone on silent, and he was at work anyway. He would be back soon, though, and when he arrived, we could figure something out. My friend asked if he should call a locksmith, and I said I didn't want the trouble. Okay. He seated himself by the bathroom door. Suddenly, an abrupt sound erupted from where he was sitting and was muted just as promptly. He apologized. I thought we wouldn't be talking much after that, but after 10 minutes passed, he began texting me funny pictures with funny captions. I laughed loud enough so he could hear me and ridiculed him and the picture so that there wouldn't be any silence. Another 10 minutes. We had started talking about his futures again, our futures again. Somewhere in between the conversation, he asked me why I took everything so seriously. How do you mean? I asked him. But he didn't say anything for a while. It just didn't make sense. He was trying to keep me suffocated. And that moment was the result of every moment that had ever preceded it. This made me wonder the extent to which I am myself, and the extent to which I am the effect of this suffocation. Perhaps I am a masquerade of idols and fantasies that have actualized into a human being. A little change after this comment, a little change after that one. I didn't want to look in the mirror again. Have you ever seen a brown-headed cowbird? I asked my friend. He scoffed. No, tell me about them. They're really a pretty bird. The males have a dark coat and a brown head, and the females have much lighter tan feathers all around. They have a light and melodic call. I could hear him scratching himself behind the door. Maybe he was scratching his arm, maybe his shoulder. When the females are ready to lay eggs, they find a nest of another bird species already filled with spawn, and that's where they lay their egg. Inadvertently, the other bird will take care of and raise their young, without ever having realized that it wasn't their own. I thought about that a moment longer. Those young, they are con artists in that way, perfectly pretending to be something they are not, principally for their own advantage. They don't know it. They didn't put themselves in that nest, but it benefits them to stay and to pretend. He didn't say anything again, and that made me anxious. Eventually, my godfather called, and I told him about the situation. He would be coming in half an hour. I told my friend this, and he used it as an excuse to leave. I didn't blame him. It made sense. Then I waited around, crumpling toilet paper into little balls and tossing them into the trash can from where I was sitting. Life has yet to push me to many conclusions, but whatever sense it will limit me to in the end, I will know this. It cannot be the truth. Thank you.
Wish there was like a more clapping sound we could add in, like a little jingle, or what are those called when you have the buttons that let you make like noises, like they're like keyboard soundboard, is that what it's called?
Yeah. Well, yeah, like radio hosts have them.
Yeah, we should get one.
Yeah, we can do like 10 different versions of clapping so that it looks like there's different people clapping every time.
Yeah, because with these Zoom things, I feel like there's always like that like quiet background silence at the end, and it's like,
Yeah.
I want to like, I guess like you could like do the snapping thing, like it's like the jazzy like yes.
Yeah, they do this too. That's
Oh yeah.
But
Well,
I'm always silent because I got to switch up and usually switch over the screen.
yeah. Well, thank you, Soren. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Soren, was there anything that you've been reading or that you read while writing that kind of inspired it or helped it? So I find when I'm writing a short story, I like to reference some stuff or just see how other people are doing similar ideas that I'm doing. and not lift them, but when you're reading, you inevitably get a little bit inspired for something else or something similar.
I mean, to some extent, it's probably inspired by existentialism. The biggest inspiration was when I got stuck in the bathroom
Excellent.
downstairs, and then I wrote the story idea on this toilet paper
Oh.
with a pen that somebody slid down to me before they had to go. I was in there for an hour and a half.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
jotted down the story, and then when I came out, I wrote it.
I assume
think-
you don't use your notes function on your phone.
Oh, I didn't have my phone with me.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's something artsy about being like, yes, I wrote it trapped in the bathroom on toilet paper.
Yeah, I think that's pretty funny.
I can definitely see how like the details then by with like the bathroom door, like the details that were very specific and like well written out. So I can see how you got like maybe the inspiration while you were sitting there, like from the physical door you're looking at, and kind of like put it into words.
Superficial idea expanded to a broader analogy.
Yeah.
Souren, I'm just picturing that toilet paper in a museum now. How like Jack Kerouac on the road is in museums, and it's in the big glass roll. Yours is just a nice little glass picture on the wall.
That's
That's
right.
awesome.
When I become a monument for literature, right?
Yeah. Frame it for like, honestly, that's so cool. Like in a few years too, like if you actually like take care to preserve that, in a few years that'll be like cool to be like, hey, like that's framed toilet paper I wrote this story on.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll frame that on the wall.
Yes, do it for me.
Okay, Delane.
Awesome.
Is Camus the only brand of existentialism that you like?
Oh,
Because like that term is very very broad.
Yeah, no. I mean, Camus is more absurdist, not existentialist, right? He always refuted being an existentialist.
Yeah, he hated it. But
sure.
he definitely is an existentialist, despite his dislike of the term.
We always be like, authors don't want to be in that box. Yeah, we'll put them in anyway. That's literary criticism for you.
I was trying to get into Sartre, but being a nothingness, he started it out like, okay, so now we're going to get into the etiology of phenomenology. And then I just had to put it aside.
Oh, thank you.
But I guess other than Camus, maybe Voltaire. It wasn't quite existentialism, but Voltaire definitely had an influence on me. I read Candide a while ago. Candide was gorgeous. Vonnegut would have loved Candide. That is totally within the shape of stories. Oh my gosh. But
oh wow, wouldn't that like, isn't Voltaire, he is a philosopher, isn't he? Or is this a different Voltaire?
Voltaire, the philosopher, the French philosopher.
So he also wrote a novel, or is that just his like letters?
Oh, it's a novel, Candide.
Oh.
Yeah.
I always like
hilarious. It's
like
bad. It's terrible humor, but
I'm always like, oh, like a lot of philosophers, like they're very dense for me. So sometimes I struggle with like a lot of like the terminology primarily. But I feel like a novel written by a philosopher would be very interesting. But sometimes their writings, I'm like, I don't get it.
Voltaire has one of my favorite lines where he's on his deathbed and someone tells him to renounce Satan. He says, "Now's no time to be making enemies."
That's good.
That is good. We should move on to the next one though, I think. And
Oh
then
yeah.
We'll come back and we'll do more discussion at the end.
Yeah, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Souren.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Who do we have next up, Ian?
We have Bolu. Is it Bolu?
Yeah, it's Bolu.
All right.
Yeah.
I love that name. It's pretty.
That's beautiful. We'll remove ourselves.
Yeah, so why don't you introduce yourself for us?
Okay, so my name is Bolu. I like writing fiction, some fantasy, because that's mostly what I read. I've been writing for a really long time, maybe grade 5 or grade 6. What I'm reading right now, I actually have the book right here. It's called Wayfarer. It's actually the book 2. I really like the book because it's kind of a time travel idea in the book. So like most people traveling back and forth. So I just like the idea of the book. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
Why don't
cool.
you say a little bit about what you're about to read?
The name of it's not really a short story. It's about silence. So the name of
Ah,
so it's called Silence.
so it's
All
kind of
right.
like a snapshot in a way. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, let's hear it. Thank you.
Okay. There's a huge silence you discover when you get way beyond things like houses and roads and motors. It may be frightening to begin with, but once you get accustomed to it, you realize how common it is. The silence is so profound that you can hear it roaring in your ears. It is the first time you realize that silence has its own sound. You begin to notice things that you wouldn't normally, things that speak of the serenity of that moment, such as the steady tick tock of the clock, as a slender second hand makes its way across the clock in a timely manner, like someone walking up the stairs with steady steps. The teasing whisper of the wind as it blows through your hair, like your mother caressing her young one, and the silver voices of the trees as the vibrant green leaves dance in the wind. You hear all of this, as well as the chirping of crickets as they move through the grass, the chorus of birds calling out to one another with a slight melody, and the slight rustling of grass as squirrels rush through the undergrowth. Beautiful sounds that connect you to nature just as much as it connects you to yourself.
Beautiful. Again, I want to just be like have like the clapping sound, but uh, but yeah, that's fantastic. It almost reminds me of like prose poetry, if you've ever heard of that before. So kind of
Mm.
like poetry that takes the form of prose, like written out like prose, but it's like because it's not necessarily a story, it's like still poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's like a very soft, like meditative quality to it that I think almost makes it
Mhm.
prose poetry. But also, if you ask anyone what's prose poetry, they'd say, I don't know. It's
Yeah, I still don't
I
know.
just
We did a
decided to
course
call
on
it
it.
prose poetry. Yeah, because it didn't fit anywhere else. But that's why, like, I think if you're a little bit unsure where it fits, because of that, and I think it's that meditative quality, then it does seem to fit in like a
Mhm.
little slightly different zone.
Have you ever written poetry before?
Yes, actually,
We
but
can tell,
mostly
I
for
think.
class because I don't usually.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, but you have a very poetic quality to your writing.
Have you read any prose poetry?
Not really, no.
Well, maybe we can
I
send some
mostly
stuff
read a
over.
lot of novels. Yeah.
Hmm. So fantasy novels. Do you plan on writing some, or have you written some fantasy yourself as well?
Um, I'm starting kind of a fancy novel right now. It's just
Ooh,
kind of in the basics. I'm hoping to complete it someday.
that's awesome.
It's yeah.
Those ideas
It's just like
too.
mostly ideas. Now.
That's
Yeah.
like great though, because they build over years and years. Like I'm returning, or I've
Yeah.
returned recently to a high school story I started. Like I think it was like grade 10 or so when I started it, and recently now I'm 24, and I was like looking back at it, and I was like, I want to do something with this. So you never know.
What's the strategy? Are you just writing ideas down right now for the time
Yeah.
being?
Yeah. I have like a notebook where I write like everything down, just kind of blink it back to like understand, oh, where does it start? How does it end? Like who's gonna be in it?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Sometimes
awesome.
I find that you can meditate a little bit too long on on a story, and then you almost get sick of it before you start it. You know. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen until you start writing it down, and then it totally changes,
That's true.
or it wants to go in a
Yeah.
different direction. Yeah.
But then at the same time, I guess it depends on if you're a planner or a pantser, which is something we might bring up later to everyone. Because sometimes too, I find that if I don't know like what's the beginning, middle, end, main conflict, and like have that all completely defined, then I'm like, what am I doing? Ah, existential dread. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
Thank you.
you.
All right, Ian. Who do we have next up on the chopping block, I
We
guess?
have
Maybe that's not the right terminology.
we have Graeme.
All right, Graeme.
Yeah, hi. I guess I'm going to be reading to you a bit of a short story that I wrote. I think it was a response to a prompt from Souren about something like metaphor or word association between different things.
Ah,
And it's meant to be a comedy story. That's I guess that's sort of my reputation in the club, is that I always write a silly story, basically. So
Ian does that too.
yeah,
In our group, I feel like Ian's the one who like throws in some puns midway through it.
Well, I find a lot of absurdist stories are naturally existential or philosophical because there's a reason. But do you guys have you guys all listened or heard each other's stuff already, or is some of this stuff new? Like, do you know?
It's
Like, have you guys
new.
shared these in class before?
Some of these are new. What Graeme is going to read now, we should have read that before, but
Mhm.
I think a lot of this stuff is new. I think we had it prepared here today, or it was our own things that we brought in today.
Awesome.
Cool.
And Graeme, if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself as a writer too, and like what you're reading right now, or what kind of authors are inspiring you.
I am I'm not really reading anything right now. I guess the most recent thing I read was Othello in English class. That was not a voluntary thing. Well, I mean, it technically was because it chose the class, but but
the student life, honestly.
Yes.
The English undergrad degree was like that. No reading for fun, only reading like Paradise Lost for 10 hours straight. That's it.
Yeah, you almost feel guilty when you're reading for fun a little bit because you should be reading other stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like I don't have time right now to read, but that feels like it's not true. But I don't think I have the time to figure it out whether or not I don't have the time to read. So
fair enough.
Sometimes you gotta have time to plan what you want to read next.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like you could put pretty much like any book, any author, any genre in front of me. I would probably find a way to enjoy it. But I don't know. Maybe considering what I've been doing, maybe I would prefer comedy authors more.
Cool.
I don't know. I guess my taste is developing.
Mm-hmm.
I think more and more too that I think specialists are often going away. Like very multi-talented people are coming up. I think just because we have so much media that we're always consuming all the time, that it's you're consuming so much different varieties that people are going in many directions.
Crossing genres. That's what I'm all about. I love that.
Yeah.
All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, this is my story. This is Diary. Oh, diary, how will I possibly continue to live like this, with all these emotions and feelings inside of me? How will I cope with these feelings? I think I ought to write them down. Maybe talking to someone, that's you, will help me to move forward. It all began, like so many other things in my life, last Monday morning. Oh, the calamity. I woke up and the first thing I heard was the harsh ringing of my alarm clock. It sent aggressive sound waves crashing down on my ears like a hungry raccoon pouncing on its prey. I got ready for the day and I set off to school. Then I saw her. I don't know her name, but as soon as our eyes met, I could feel the connection between us. It was so vivid and tactile that it was like a pair of handcuffs binding us together. Or maybe it was more like a pair of pants that are way too tight, except like on my hands. I know that if my heart tries to break free, it will only result in an irritating and angry rash on the skin of my wrists, or the skin of my heart, or whatever. I'm certain it was love at first Sprite. I do love Sprite. That's where the phrase came from, because so many people love Sprite. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's love at first sight, but I'm writing this in ink, so I can't really go back now. Her gaze penetrated my heart like the sharp proboscis of the assassin bug. I could feel the proboscis injecting its acidic venom into my veins, preparing to liquefy my inner organs and suck them back up, tossing my empty exoskeleton aside to pursue its next victim. Later in the day, I bumped into her by accident as I was pondering the deepest questions of life. Like, if more than one goose is called geese, then is more than one mouse called meese? And if all humans are genetically related, Does that mean that you and whoever you're dating once had the same parents? Are you like cousins? The point is, I bumped into her, and her hand brushed against mine. Her touch was like holding a slimy shrew or a weasel, constantly trying to squeeze through my fingers to give me a painful bite to the hand. Did you know that the shrew is one of the only venomous mammals? Well, she certainly is venomous. Like an assassin bug. You remember the assassin bug, right? As the squirming mammal continued to torment me, she spoke her first words to me. Her voice was soft and silky, like the bedspread at the Motel 6 I stayed at last weekend. Speaking of which, that Motel 6 was really good, but I digest. Or maybe it's supposed to be digress. I don't know. She was wearing a dress that was white and crystalline, like dried spit on the dentures of an old man as they sat on his nightstand. Her fingernails were covered in a shiny and smooth polish. It was like looking at the scab on my scraped knee. Her teeth were glistening white. I looked at her face and feared that I would never be able to tear my gaze away. It was like tentacles had emerged from her head and wrapped around my body, their suction cups lined with teeth that dug into my flesh and made me want to scream out in horror. Her eyes emitted a glow like the eyes of a raccoon hissing at you at night in a trash can. I'm pretty sure I wrote about a raccoon earlier. I think about raccoons a lot. Trapped in her gaze, I felt like I was in a zoo, being watched by everyone as they tried to force dead fish between the bars of the cage I was in to feed me. Anyways, then I had a math test and I went home. Overall, it was a pretty good day. The end.
Excellent. Thank you, Graeme.
When
I
you're,
was-
oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Delane.
I was just gonna comment. I really like the denture part. I remember making note of that too when I first read it. I was like, the dentures, excellent. It's awesome. Sorry, Ian, you go ahead with your
I was going
question.
to say, when you're writing it, do you like like your internal voice as you're writing? Is it also that emphatic? Are you excited? Are you and you're having a lot of fun as you're writing it?
I'm not sure. I am. I definitely have a lot of fun. I was in the Zoom meetings, I leave my camera on. Because usually, like most other people, they like turn their camera off, but I leave mine on so everybody can see how much I'm laughing as I'm writing the story, because I just like that. But yeah,
I loved when you laughed a little bit at one of your lines. That was great. I also was laughing at the same time, so I was like, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you get like when you're writing absurdity or like comedy, I find that you get like a little taken away and you're just like in that,
yeah,
in that
it's,
wave.
yeah, the writer's inspiration
Yeah.
just
True.
carries you off into a new land of art.
I like that you left in mistakes or like
Like quote unquote
like
mistakes.
on purpose mistakes.
But I digest.
The Gogol, have you heard of Nikolai Gogol? The Russian
No.
writer? He does that a lot in his stories because he's trying to replicate like more truth in storytelling. And he's wrote some famous stuff, but they're all absurd too. Like he wrote this one short story, The Nose, where one guy wakes up one day and he's got his barber's nose, or he's a barber, but he's got his his customer's nose in a bun.
Ugh.
He just finds it and he goes, "How does this get here? Like, how did it get here? I don't remember, cutting off anyone's nose yesterday." And then the nose walks around in an overcoat and stuff, and it's a really absurd, but it's like that. He leaves a lot of mistakes in because he's trying to almost make fun of the narrator as well as he's talking. But yeah, I'd check that out if you're interested in something similar in that vein.
I like too, just like the way they used words, like the diction in the story was like in part someone that sounded like the melancholy of my life, oh horror, calamity, but then at the same time there was like this sense that it's this kind of like someone writing in a diary about their day and like kind of hyperbolizing a lot of it, and awesome.
The
Where'd you get-
sentimentality.
I was gonna ask where you got the inspiration for that, but then I remembered you said it was the word association. Which two words did you have?
I think it was. I can't remember what it was called. I like something about like comparing things to enhance, like using metaphor or something in some way. Defamiliarization.
It's a poetic word.
Yeah, we use that a lot in poetry for sure. In our class, that was our keyword in poetry. We were like defamiliarization.
Thank you, Soren. Thank you.
I was going to say, I think it was a Russian formalist that came up with defamiliarization, and then Gogol is like a bit of a response to that. He's trying to like disrupt that formalist sense.
I don't know if this may have been a subconscious inspiration, but like as I was writing it, I think after I wrote it, I think like it almost felt like it was some kind of like pseudo parody of Romeo and Juliet, like in the modern. So I don't know, like maybe I was like subconsciously thinking about, that kind of, the flowery language, like a rose by any other name.
Yeah.
Raccoons and stuff. I don't know. Maybe
I love raccoons. I love that little side note.
I do. It's part of my, I guess, author's bias showing it, because I genuinely do love raccoons.
You just have like the motif of raccoons showing up over and over again.
Yeah.
Haunted by raccoons.
Yeah. Mr. Schoenfeld says I was locked in a bathroom with raccoons.
That would also make a good story. Mix together Souren and Graeme's stories into locked in a bathroom with raccoon. Wait, were you actually like? Is that a real story?
No, it's not
okay.
a real story.
I was like, wait a minute.
I was at one point. I was surrounded by like a herd, I guess, of that, like, however you call it, a pack of raccoons. I was at a camp in Ontario, and I was out like late outside, it was dark, the sun had gone down, and we had like a flashlight or something, and you turn it on, and just like raccoons as far as the eye can see. And that's still a very vivid memory for me. Maybe that's why I love raccoons so much. But yeah. They were huge too. They were plump raccoons. Like they were well fed.
They were fed on garbage.
A group of raccoons called a gaze. A gaze of raccoons.
A gaze of raccoons.
I feel like I've heard that before. Yeah, a gaze.
That's
huge.
Honestly,
gaze.
It makes it sound creepy, like ominous, like because like their little eyes.
Like, black
maybe they got the little like the
robber mask.
The mask, bandit mask. They're gazing at you.
Well, there's a horror story that you could write. Someone could write
a novel by Graeme Hopkins.
Exactly.
All right though. Next up, we have Kulnoor.
All right.
Is that did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, you did.
Right.
So my name is Kulnoor, and I mainly enjoy writing like short stories, but I've kind of been starting to do some poetry as well. So kind of practicing researching that, and I think I enjoy reading realistic fiction mainly, so that's kind of what I write as well. That transfers over, so that's kind of yeah.
So you have a poem for us today?
I do. Yeah, it's there's no really you could call it free verse, I guess. There's no structure to it, but it is a poem. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear it. Let's jump in.
Okay, it's called Each to Their Own. So her smile was on strings carried from show to show, aging days and aching hearts pulled by too many. Her own cheeks had forgotten the direction of happiness. The ends of her lips were weighed down by the laughs of the crowd. She wished to shatter at the thought of just another tomorrow. Her eyes searched the crowded sky every night, and when all were deaf to her sorrow, he listened. Together they defined the lines drawn from the weights of the world, lifted from the lives they could not bear anymore. He showed her the paths that the stars had made, carried her behind planets, between galaxies, and into the depths they once feared to find. And as they gazed upon Earth, he pointed to her many homes, almost lost in the wisps of green and blue, happily knowing she existed beyond their imagination. But soon their fingers detangled, and even the ghosts of the strings that once tied her to others had disappeared. A deep laugh rose from the depth of her belly as she flew on her own, her eyes radiating the infinitive bliss she was once shown. And there he was left, standing on the world of fantasies they had built together for so long, with tears of joy and the bitter taste of loneliness. That's it.
Awesome. For that one, I want to snap because I feel like poetry brings out the let's snap. Deep. Awesome.
You remember the inspiration behind that? Like what kind of mindset you were in, or?
Actually, it was from a song I had been listening to over and over.
Oh.
So not necessarily another.
Was there a
book.
line? Sometimes like there's like a line that gets stuck in my head, and it just turns into or flows into some kind of poem.
Yeah, it was kind of like they had been using in the song. They had been using like I guess portraying specific like just realistic emotions, but through kind of these like massive, complex like just outer space or things that you wouldn't necessarily connect with like the emotions that humans feel, I guess. And so I kind of wanted to do that. Hopefully, I pulled
You
it
want to
off.
share
Yeah.
the song?
It's
You don't
called
have to, but
Okay, I'll skip on it. I'll get you the song then.
All right.
Not magicians don't share their
Yeah.
secrets. I like the galaxies especially. What was the line? The carried her behind planets between galaxies. I like that
Between
a lot.
galaxies, yeah.
Yeah. I liked their fingers detangled because we talk a lot about verb usage in our classes and detangling of the fingers. Like that's a really good verb to use there. I liked it a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Soren's heard a poem that I wrote where I was like, stars are buttholes of the sky. That's just a little random if we're talking about universes,
Is
No
there
comment
like
necessary.
So you said you were looking into more poetry recently. Is there like any poets in particular you've been kind of researching? I think you're muted right now. Just
Sorry about that.
worries.
Not necessarily poets, but I was kind of researching like the different structures you can go with and like the rhyming patterns and all that. So yeah, I was kind of looking at the more basics to improve
yeah.
my poetry instead of just always writing free verse because I think that's the easier way to go. But
Yeah, free verse is like there's so many options, I think is the fun part. I'm more of a fan of free verse myself for poetry, but I've tried other kinds and like you gotta try them at least to like see if you like them, but I don't like the boundaries of sometimes like rhyme schemes and especially like meter. Meter is so like hard to remember like and like get right. But that's awesome.
Yeah, I think some people often think there's no rules to free verse. Well, there's not really rules, but there's some stuff that you can see that people are just doing whatever. They're not trying to, because they're kind of internal rules. Like you're making your own kind of rules as you go along, but there should be some kind of coherence to what you're doing. But you can make those up, I think.
That almost like sounds like a nonsensical thing, but also like makes sense. Ian.
Yeah.
Ian.
Yeah, like there should be some like internal consistency
should be rules,
to
but
your no
like
rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your own rules. You make up the rules, but there should be some rules that you made up.
Yeah. That's kind of the fun thing too, is that it's like writing a story too. Like you're kind of like making it up as you go along, but like using that consistency like throughout, and that's kind of sweet.
All right.
I'm glad we got a poem in here too, among the fiction.
Yeah, thank
you. Who do we have up next?
We have Nadia.
All right. Hello.
So, my name is Nadia, and I really enjoy writing poetry and a little bit of realistic fiction. And I just, ever since I was little, like grade 3, grade 2, as soon as we started writing, I would always finish it so quickly and would always just be writing stuff. It wasn't very good, but I was very enthusiastic about it.
That's what's important.
And I'm actually not really a reader, like at all. I'll read for school, of course, but I not really recently have been reading books on my own. What I'll do a lot, because I really like the poetry and the symbolism, is I'll analyze songs. Like I'll just like copy and paste the lyrics and just analyze what all the lyrics mean. And I guess it's not reading, but it's not.
It's like it's a kind of poetry.
Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite lyricists?
Oh gosh. There's so many that I like. Just kind of random artists that I'm not sure will mean anything, like H Bunny or stuff like that. But yeah.
No pressure.
Cool.
No pressure.
All right, and what do you have for us today that you're gonna read for us?
I have a poem about a tortured artist.
Ah, I like it already.
All right, let me pull it up. All right, am I good to start?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
All right. He cast the fairy ring around this rim years ago, but he stepped in it daily and broke it to revisit his tasks after a bad night's rest. He ate his yellow paint in the hopes of happiness and understanding. The illusion of productivity poisoned his soul in the stolen name of progress. Yellow is the color of sunshines and flowers and smiles, so why would its pigment be so self-destructive? His insides were dyed with ignis fatuus, and the toxins were seeping into his skin. Perhaps he was insane. To attempt to paint rainbows on the flies following him around, to add an extra shade of sun to his cloudy eyes, mixing reds and yellows and browns to get the shade of each skin tone he'd ever met. The excess left on his palette and thrown in drawers laughed at his efforts, for he had no joy or beaches or honeybees to paint. They held him hostage and hoarded their glee. But maybe, if he became the paint instead of the painter, he could understand why it was so difficult to create a masterpiece, why no amount of dye nor shade of yellow could do the trick, why the paint was less of a tool and more of an obstacle, a contradictory necessity. A tortured artist's life is a tortured artist's doom. The only speck of unproductive joy can be seen at the bottom of a bottomless tube. If he could become the paint, he could give himself to the canvas instead of pulling these friends closer and closer. But sadly, he cannot dematerialize to become something he's not. So all he does is eat yellow paint, stomachs as much as he can, and hopes that eventually he will be more paint than man.
Another like snapping, like wanna like be like, yeah, cool, wonderful.
Yeah,
I really
some,
like
some
the
really good lines.
eating the paint at the end.
Yeah.
Awesome. What was the inspiration behind this one for you?
Well, actually, a while ago, my friend told me about a myth that Van Gogh used to eat his yellow paint because he thought it would make him happy. And so there's been debate on whether that's true or not, but I just thought that was a really cool idea because it's kind of commonly known Van Gogh wasn't in like the best headspace at the time.
Putting it lightly.
Yeah. And so I just thought the idea of eating paint is like when you're a really frustrated painter, just seemed like a really interesting thing to write about.
Yeah, kind of like it's like it seems like a sense of and in there too it's like you're becoming the art because people are like always like feel the art, like be the art, and it's like taking that like literally like eating the paint but also metaphorically, which is awesome as well.
I like the idea too, like of there's not a lot of distinction between like the tools of an artist and the art or like the creator, and like there's like this yeah.
Reminds me a little bit of like Pygmalion from like the Ovidian myths, like old Roman myths. That was the one that I think made a statue and then fell in love with it, and I don't know, it kind of just reminded me of like like making something but like also becoming something at the same time. I don't know. Awesome.
I've never heard of that myth before.
Pygmalion?
I just googled
like,
it.
Yeah, there's been a couple like
George
other artists
play as well.
Yeah, there's like a couple plays like based off of it. I'm like there's a few things based off of it, but I'm really like drawing a blank right now. But yeah, excellent. So is poetry the area that you mostly focus on then, or you said fiction as well sometimes?
Yeah, I absolutely love putting like symbolism, and I don't know if metaphors would be the right thing, but I like ever since like talking about analyzing the song lyrics, I absolutely love writing that you have to think about it a bit more. Like I think there was one line I put in here, instead of pulling these friends closer and closer, that was kind of alluding to the idea keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it gets me in trouble though, because then people will just not understand what I'm saying. But I
Poet's
just
curse, honestly.
yeah, exactly. But I've always absolutely loved like writing and poetry, that you have to think about it to really understand it. And I'm not sure if it's just always easier in poetry or just easier to me in poetry, but that's kind of why I've liked it.
Nadia, I put one of my favorite Dean Young poems. He's very symbolic or very hard. Like you got to think a little bit about what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be interested in
Yeah.
that.
Ian's a Dean Young fanboy.
Yeah, yeah. Youngin,
Oh, Young Ian. How do you say it?
Young Ian.
Oh, Young Ian, as in.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's a play on your name and
I
also
didn't realize
like
that. Yeah, I didn't realize
the
that part.
group of
Yeah,
young followers.
it's also the Dean Young effect, as his friend called it. Lots of
Ah.
young writers imitating Dean Young.
Huh. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you. Next we have Trushank.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Okay, there you are.
Awesome.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been reading, or what you usually like reading, what you write?
So I'm Trushank, and I don't read as often. I'm actually more of a movie watcher.
Oh,
I like to analyze movies, try to figure out some meaning behind them. Recently, I've actually been watching. This whole year has been like an anime binge for me.
Oh, me too.
Past month, I've been watching Naruto.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday, I watched Inside by Bob Burnham.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm finally going to get to Lord of the Rings. And for books, whenever I do read, I do try to use them as a way to help myself. And so right now, the book that I am reading slowly is The Anatomy of Loneliness, to better understand myself and just life in general.
I have that in my audibles, but I have never listened to it. That's when it started the pandemic. I downloaded it.
That's a fair time to download it. That's a pretty fair time.
Have you ever watched the movie Perfect Blue?
I have not.
No, it's like a 1997 anime serial killer movie. Very good.
I haven't heard of that either. Where are you?
Right, I've heard of it now.
Yeah, it's very famous.
Yeah, I remember
it's very famous.
What? Are you talking about like? So are you talking about anime or animated movies, Ian?
Anime.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a huge weeb. I don't know why I haven't heard of that.
Well, it's 1997, so maybe it's a little before your time.
Okay. Actually,
he also did
Paprika. Thank you very
Paprika's.
much.
Paprika is pretty famous too.
Yes,
it's
I've
like a dream
I've heard
movie.
of that one.
Yeah. But
anyway, sorry to completely go off the rails there. What are you reading for us today?
I have I think would you like a snippet, or would you like me to read the whole short story?
How many pages do you got?
I got 8 pages.
What do you think, Ian? Do you think we can go for the full short story?
Yeah, we might as well.
We might as well steam through it, and then
and then we'll do a Q&A after, or anything we want.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, take us away.
So my story is called Locked, and here we go. Is this the last of the boxes? Shouts a boy barely shorter than the door as he enters the dorm room and shuts the door behind him. A girl's voice in the other room responds, I think so, maybe. You're not sure how many boxes you brought with you? All right, listen, she laughs, half frustrated. The girl walks out of her bedroom, her hair red as fire and her eyes blue as like the ocean. She stands assertive, looking up to the boy. He glances down, still holding the boxes, feeling their weight getting heavier. It's been a hectic. Larry, can you put those boxes over there? She asked, pointing to an empty corner. Jesus, what do you even have in these? God knows. I even forgot what I packed. Larry laughs. All right then. So you're getting me to do labor work for free and better for no good reason. But I'll tell you what, the girl says, plopping down on a lone chair by the window. I am overwhelmed. Do you want to take a break? No time at all. I need everything in. I get that, but you can always. No, she interrupts him, giving him a glare while getting back up to go to the kitchen. Larry lets out a sigh and walks limp to the door. All right, Aubrey, I'll go get the other stuff. He walks to the door and goes to open it. He jiggles the doorknob, but it doesn't open. He tries harder, using both of his arms. Hey, Aubrey, can you come over here? What? Why? The door won't open. What? It won't. He let out a grunt, trying to pull the door open. No, I heard you, she snaps as she goes to open the door. Aubrey places both of her hands and tries to open the door, using the weight of her entire body. Suddenly, she lets go and curses. Aubrey starts to breathe heavily and prances back and forth around the room. Larry starts to root around his pockets for his cell phone. Hey, it's all right. Let me call. You left your phone in the car, Aubrey exclaims nervously. I left my phone in the car. Larry puts his hand on his forehead and pinches his eyes shut. Aubrey puts her back to the wall and then slides down to the floor. Her eyes are full of tears. She digs her head into her arms and knees and begins to cry. Larry stops for a minute, trying to process how to help her. He sits down next to her. Hey, it'll be fine. We'll get the door open. Larry reassures her and puts his arm on her shoulder. She brings her head out of her arms, her face puffy, flowing with tears. How? Does anyone have a spare key to the dorm in this city? He asks. No. All right. Well, how about we call a locksmith? I'm sure they can help. Right. Yeah. So here, give me your phone. I'll call them, and I'll make sure that they can help. Larry smiles. Aubrey gives him her phone. Hello. We got locked in a door room and the door is broken. Can you come and fix it? Oh, all right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can wait. Awesome. Thank you. See you soon. Larry hung up the phone and returned it to Aubrey. There. See? Not that hard. Now we wait. But, on the bright side, we haven't hung out in a long time. Aubrey's face was still puffy from crying, yet her tears had stopped. Larry looked at her indifferently. You're right, Aubrey replied with a chuckle. Larry took a deep breath. So, how have you been? Stressed, I guess. She wipes her tears with her sleeve. You guess? Okay. And how have you really been? Aubrey looked at Larry with a half smile. Scared. Aubrey takes a deep breath, really scared. It's the move, isn't it? He asked softly. Friends leaving, all those goodbyes, moving on to another chapter of your life is hard. You remember how upset I was when we moved to high school? But this is a lot worse. A lot more. Everything just seems to be changing so fast and I can't seem to keep up. I just don't know what to do. Aubrey glances back at Larry as she coughs. Hold on, let me get you some water. Larry returns shortly after. Here. She thanked him. Aubrey drinks the water as Larry thinks what a response. You're right, he finally decides to say. The move from high school to university is intense. It's hard to leave everything behind and move on as if it's all just some distant memory. If there's one thing I can say, is that I'm scared too. Larry looks up to his ceiling and begins to fidget with his hands in his lap. Aubrey looks over and tilts her head. Larry, now lost in his own world, stares deeper at the ceiling. Silence. A sense of comfort flows over them, knowing they can be quiet in the presence of each other. Breaking the silence, Larry asks, So, tell me more. What else is scary? What isn't, Who the hell knows where life is going to go from here? Either I could be living luxuriously in a mansion or end up dead in a ditch alone. Larry scoffs. Okay, all right. Well, that last one isn't going to happen. Who knows? Aubrey explains as she flings her arms to her side. I, for one, know you will not be lying dead in a ditch, at least not alone. He smirks at her as her eyes widen. We've beaten that horse to death already. Us dating just does not work out. Her whole face relaxes as she looks at Larry with sorrowful eyes. She knows how much pain she has caused him, yet he still decides to be at her side. She doesn't know if Larry's a fool or a good man to keep coming back to her. A good man is what she believes him to be. To be honest, I've shot my shot more times than I'd like to admit. He laughs, remembering the third time he asked out Aubrey, the day before Valentine's Day. He later spent all of Valentine's Day working out and eating ice cream. Larry believes himself to be a fool for trying so hard. Losing you is one of the reasons I'm so scared to move. Larry looks over and squints his eyes. Really? Yeah, how could I not be scared of losing you? We have so much history. History. Yeah, that's one way to put it. He looks away again, taking another deep breath. Larry needs to be careful with his words. The last thing he wants is to upset Aubrey. I mean, you're not wrong. It feels like we've known each other our whole lives. He begins to stare at the ceiling again, trying not to lose himself this time. It's crazy. Back there, it's all we knew. It's how we have lived forever, and now we're just thrown into a forest without a map or guide and no destination. I just feel so lost. But we're no strangers to being lost, are we? Larry says. Somehow, some way, we always find our way back to each other. Larry looks over at Aubrey with tears in his eyes. Here's the funny thing about being lost. You're not lost alone. Everyone around you is lost, especially us younger people. We may feel as though we are going through this forest aimlessly, and that is partly true. A lot of us do not know where life will lead us, but rest assured, it will be okay. We are not lost by ourselves. We have people lost with us. Friends are along with us in this journey of life. And some may part away to follow their dreams and goals, but the path that they have walked will never be forgotten. When we fall over a branch or run into a tree, we have our friends to pick us up and lead us in the right direction. Even when you're lost, you're never alone. Larry grabs Aubrey's hand with both of his. Let's be lost. We'll get out of this forest together. Larry looks over at Aubrey, his eyes now filled with tears, yet there was his boyish, optimistic smile. Aubrey shuffles closer and begins to cry while laying on his shoulder. He grabs her other hand and lays his head on hers. Hey, it's all right. We'll get through this, even if we're thousands of miles away from each other. Thank you, Aubrey uttered under her tears. I'm just happy to have been here to help. And he truly believed this. Being around Aubrey always made Larry happy. She brought out the best of him, and he sought to be the best of himself. A knock on the door prematurely ruins their moment together. They're here, Aubrey says. She wipes her tears. Already? Time flies, huh? Larry remarks as he shares a tearful yet hopeful look with Aubrey. Thus is the way of young love, beautiful and tragic. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Love it. I love those kind of stories. Like I love like kind of like romantic comedy genre in anime as well, since you were talking about that earlier. So yeah, it kind of reminded me of some of those scenes in like shows like that. What was your inspiration? Sorry. Bleh. What was your inspiration behind that story?
Well, my inspiration. So, like I write stories pretty personal, as a way, because when I watch stories and watch movies, it better helps me understand myself more and what I'm dealing with. And so I was having this conversation with one of my closest friends. Now this person might be loosely based off of somebody in real life, and we were talking about university, and I was like, and I was like, how do I say something? But like I wanted to really feel it and like say it. So I was like, you know what? Instead of actually telling her, why don't I just write a story about it? Because that'll be easier. And so that was really the inspiration, because we were just having this conversation, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like it's such a relatable feeling as well. Like I think in a way stories are good for that, to share those feelings with other people who might be like feeling the same kind of way, like cuz all of those like turning points, yeah, like oh, I was terrified graduating high school, and like thinking about like what am I gonna do like after this, like what is my like now I can choose what I want to do, but what do I want to do, like and also yeah, just also holding on to other people as well. And yeah, I like that bit at the end about feeling lost. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like motivational speeches, and sometimes I like I'm up at night thinking, and I just come up with these rants, and I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me write some of these down. I'll just throw them in somewhere in a story that fits.
Well, you're good at it, so why not?
Exactly.
Trushank, have you ever heard of the movie Diner by Barry
Diner?
Levinson? Yeah.
I have not. No.
So it's like, because the idea there is it's like a really single setting, like talk about life.
Mhm.
And Diner's like one of the first ones to ever do that, where it's not really plot heavy, but it's very dialogue based.
Oh.
Yeah. And
So
like, sorry, go ahead.
Is it like before sunset?
Yes, yeah. So those will all be inspired by the movie Diner. It's like a 70s movie. It's his first movie he ever did, and he kind of changed the entire way those kind of stories are done. Or he was the innovative person to do it. So like if you see like Reservoir Dogs or like Pulp Fiction or Seinfeld or Curb, or like My Dinner with Andre, those are all based are inspired by Diner, and they would all say yeah, like they've seen that movie, and it really
Huh.
started that entire genre of single setting, no plot, just talking about nothing, and by nothing extent is talking about everything, you know, life and existence and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because like especially in writing and just in real life too, I just love characters and people, and I just want to get to know them more. And it's always interesting to see what happens when you put two just different, sometimes very different characters, and just see what happens. And like, what do they talk about? What do they do?
Yeah.
Do you see like screenwriting in your future?
Yes, I actually have written. I think I wrote one last year for
Oh,
fun. Didn't really like it. It's just really hard because I think too much when I write. I think I need to just realize I need to get it down on the paper and just done with, and then I can think about like all the crazy like foreshadowing, imagery, themes, like
yeah, build that in
philosophical.
after. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of my favorite things comes from, I think it's Robert McKee. He's got a book on dialogue. He's a screenwriter, and his whole thing is about like a third thing. So whenever you're doing dialogue, the two characters are not exactly talking about what they're talking about. There's always a third thing off the table, so they're not being direct. They're almost talking, to each other, but they're always referring to something else. And there's like this
The
third
elephant
thing
in
they're
the
actually,
room,
yeah,
kinda.
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Dialogue is definitely something that I do need some work on because sometimes it can feel choppy and then what is it? Just like out of the blue sometimes, right?
I have that too sometimes. With just like, sometimes you'll think just in the dialogue, and then afterwards you kind of have to like fill it out. Like, okay, are they like just standing there, or are they moving a little bit? Like some dynamics in there. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I've been
also if
working
you
on
want to
that
be a
recently.
screenwriter, you're gonna always be a little thin in the physical actions, I think, just 'cause you can
Exactly.
usually see it. So it's a lot of that's gonna be written in by the actors, or like that's the actor's prerogative to kind of do what physically they feel like they should do.
Yeah, exactly. I know a couple weeks later when we actually had to write this, Souren helped me edit it and make it cleaner. And he told me, he's like, you are a great screenwriter because this is like a screenwriting thing. This is not
Oh
like,
yeah.
because I wrote it, I wrote it in a short story format, but since I'm used to screenwriting, I wrote it as if like the actors would have read it and not like an actual reader would have read it.
Ah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting too. That like I picked up on that like reading it. I was like, oh, like screenwriting in there. I feel like because you can definitely like tell that there's like this like dynamicness in the dialogue itself. So
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, well, thank
fantastic.
you. Should we
Welcome.
Yeah.
go to everyone?
I'd actually like to get so
Brad?
like the club's group. Brad, would you like to maybe say anything about the students that you've been kind of guiding and looking over for the last like school year?
Well, I wouldn't really say that I was guiding them. I was kind of more of a organizing force, and I mean, really, the Souren took the lead, but you have to give credit to these guys who showed up every day, and not to harbor on what these guys are missing out in because of the pandemic and all the other things that they normally would do, but this was one thing that we kind of thought we could do safely, and there's a whole bunch more people who are either unable to make it today or just didn't feel comfortable sharing. But every week I get to hear some awesome writing, and sometimes Souren only gives them 5-10 minutes to write, and they're really neat little snippets, and they really do their best to try and use some of the prompts or the ideas that he's trying to help them work on. So it's been a real pleasure to just sit back and be a fly in the wall most days and just hear some really good stories and some conversations.
Definitely. Well, I think what they've read today, like even though this is just a section of the full club, it's really cool to see what you guys have been working on and accomplishing, like in your own time as well as the club time.
Yeah, I have to always remind myself that most of these are people are 15, 16, 17 years old and not adults, because a lot of their writing is not only about adult kind of themes, but just the way they write is pretty mature for their age. So I'm always pretty impressed.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think I don't know about you, Ian, but I'm impressed like by everyone's work today. Yeah. It's been awesome, like having all of you on. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Brad, before we open up to questions for everybody?
No, I think that, it's fantastic that you guys are doing this kind of podcast and kind of making a bridge between, sort of the high school and the post-secondary and some of the other initiatives that are out there, and some of the writing camps and the things that are going on. I think it's great that there's sort of this continuum of different ages and mentorship from different people. So it's not just all old farts like me and high school teachers and English teachers. I think there's a lot more value in having people like you and Ian and even the writer in residence we had on, so he's
Danny,
he's kind of in between my age and your age, and so he's got, we've really had a whole gambit of kind of that mentorship and back and forth between the writers and the and experience levels and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. The cool thing about writing is that like people do it at all ages, and like even our cohort for our program, like Ian, myself, and our other two, Aliza and Callum, we're all pretty like relatively close in age. Ian, you're probably like a little bit older than the rest of us, but like we also have like one person who has like 3 PhDs. Like she is a professor in her own right, and she's part of our team. And we have like I think like all over the board, like different ages and different life experiences in our group too, and it's just really cool because writers come from everywhere and do all sorts of different things at all ages. All right, we want to have some questions for everybody, and for this part too, like just feel free to answer if you feel like it or weigh in whenever. We'll open up the floor to everybody. Ian, you want to kick us off with a question?
Sure. When do you guys find that you write the best or most? Like,
What
do you guys
time
have
of
a
day?
certain time of day that things flow a little better than other times?
I certainly have like this thing where, depending on what I'm writing, whether it be happy or sad, I like to listen to some music. And that'd be sad music, right? Because what I read to you guys, I was listening to Frank Ocean's Ivy, like on repeat for like 30 minutes as I wrote it, and it was like I was in this zone. It was great.
I was listening to like Lovecraftian like cosmic horror like instrumentals in my office earlier today, and my boyfriend came in and was like, "What are you listening to?" Because it was just like wah, wah, wah. And he was just like, "What's going on in here?" And I was like, "I'm getting in the headspace."
I used to have a big phase of movie OSTs, because they wouldn't have lyrics, but they would have like something to kind of feel the vibe, or like something. I do find that I need music often, unless I'm like editing out loud or something, to get into it. And then I find if I don't have a good album right now, like my writing productivity just drops.
What about anyone else? Any times of day? Any like night owls or really like early morning or?
I almost always will write at night. Usually it's the less coherent stuff. It's just like random stuff in my notes app. But it's always when I need to be sleeping. And in my head I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep now. I'm gonna actually try and get sleep before school. And then I stay up for another 2 hours just writing.
Yeah. I remember that from high school for sure. Just being up like really late because I was like, I just gotta finish this idea because I can't sleep until it's written down. Exactly. Awesome. Anyone else have the same kind of thing, or does anyone write in like between classes or when you're supposed to be in class? Don't tell anyone, but I did that in undergrad.
I feel like I write the most in the period of time immediately after someone has asked me to write.
Ah.
Yeah.
So very externally motivated.
Yes. Well, like, yeah, a good amount of the writing I've done this year has like seriously has been from like the club meetings. But also I think, just whenever I if I ever get an idea for a story and I can't stand not having any of it written down. And so I feel like I have to write. I feel like that's good time. And no matter what time of day, you know, when I am, if the idea happens and I need to get it down, I think that's the best time, basically.
I do find sometimes ideas are like dreams. You know, the longer you wait on them, the stupider they seem.
Or like they like start to leave
Yeah.
you a little bit. They get foggy.
Yeah. So you go back to them and you're like, why did I think this was such a good idea? What did
But
I
when
have?
you write them in the moment, you're like, masterpiece, 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 all the inspiration in the world. And then you get a draft down and you're like, I did it.
Yeah.
Love that. Does anyone else want to weigh in before I throw another question in? One thing we were curious about too is whether you guys are the types to plan a lot before you start writing, or if you just write like by the seat of your pants, so to speak. If you just go straight into it without a plan. And that's open to anyone.
I think it varies by the story, and especially the type of story I'm writing. Because with the comedy ones, which I've done like a bunch of, like probably like, I don't know, 6, maybe like a lot of stories. Yeah, they're usually just, I have the story, I have the essential comedic element of the story. But then I just write, and then, you know, be vaguely aware of the time limit and just try and get down as much as I can. But if it's something more serious, I guess I have a plan, but it's very abstract, and I don't write anything down. I don't like make like a plot diagram or anything. It just sort of, I kind of think that I know where the story is going and what's going to happen, but yeah, I just write. Yeah, depends on the story, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like definitely that I can relate to that personally. Like sometimes it'll be like I have the idea, and sometimes just the concept's enough, and sometimes I'm like, like I actually want to know where I'm going a little bit. What about anyone else?
I feel
Kind
like
of plan.
sometimes.
Trushank, you want to go?
Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
sometimes I usually don't have plans ever. I'll let ideas simmer in my head, and then what it is like sometimes the ending can just come as you're writing, and so it's just like it just builds up upon itself, and then you can change it in your other drafts. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes things just have a natural conclusion. And was that Soren was also going to answer?
That was me. Yeah, I try to plan. I'll show you. See that big board?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was attending a workshop by Anne Lamott. She gave, it was one of her advice. You put up a bunch of pieces of graph paper. You have to use graph paper because it makes your writing look neater. And then you
Okay.
draw little circles every time you have an idea, and then you start connecting things, and then you make your story. Yeah, I tried that. I haven't written the story yet. It's been up
It'll
there
happen.
for a long time. But I preferred the advice of Hemingway. It's a little bit worse for me because, you know, it's by the seat of your pants, which it shouldn't be. My personal conviction. But it was just that you write the truest thing you know, and then you go from there. And so that's what I usually do, in spite of myself.
I feel like a mix of both is always like a healthy mixing of both can always be good. Or like, I guess also like whatever works for the individual, you know, like if you feel like it really works to have like the plan and be like, I know what this story is going to be and that's how I make it, then that's all, that's perfect. And sometimes, yeah, like if you want to just like get at that feeling and you just want to dig out as much of that true feeling as possible, sometimes you have to just sit down and let it like word vomit.
Nadia, you
Awesome.
look like you're gonna say something. I think you unmuted yourself.
Sorry, did you say my name?
Yeah.
Well, I was with poetry, it's interesting because at least for me, usually I don't like, it's very rare that I'll sit down and think, okay, now I'm going to write a poem. It's usually inspiration that already happened. And I guess this isn't really a technique. Maybe it's just something as I've written more poetry, it just happens in my brain. But I'll think of, this sounds cheesy, but I'll think of poetic lines just as I go about my day. Like I was walking to work the other day and sometimes it'll just be like clusters of flies, like especially when it's outside in the summer. And I just thought of the line, the flies are following me around as if I've already been dead for months.
Love it.
And so, and I'll just like very quickly jot them down. And so I'll just have like just not pages, but like a good amount of just one-liners that then can just kind of be expanded into stuff. So I don't know if that's planning or a technique or just like lucky that I think of them in the moment, but with poetry it can be kind of different than fiction or something like
Totally. Yeah. I do that too actually, that like especially when I was in like classes in person in undergrad. Like I would just like be on the bus and I'd be like, the snow, it glitters like diamonds. I'd just like type it down on my phone. I'd be like, good one. And then later you can like go through those and be like, any inspiration here? Like, do I want to build on any of these? Yeah, it's awesome.
I have a poetry graveyard is what I call it. So it's like lines that whenever I just randomly think of random lines that I like, and then whenever I go to write a poem, I just look through the lines and see what really sticks out, and then write something from that. Or I just don't write anything at all, and then that's why it's a graveyard. But yeah.
All right. Maybe let's go in maybe one more like group question. And if anyone, there's a couple of you that haven't talked yet, if you want to weigh in on the next question or want to say anything else about any of the other previous questions. Ian, do you want to pick one out for us?
Sure. What's something that's you guys have been on your mind lately about writing, like about your writing or about writing in general? For example, like detail, like specific detail. So like say you're gonna write like a bathroom. This is what's been on my mind. You're not gonna talk about stuff that would normally be in there because people know what bathrooms look like. You're gonna talk about something that wouldn't normally be in there to make it unique or specific.
Like unusual details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like they're well-placed details that make that place unique and real. That's something I've just been thinking a lot about lately.
So like maybe even something you're having trouble with or something that's just like catching your interest and you want to like learn more about it. Might need a moment to even think about that one too, because that's a big question.
I don't know if I don't do as much writing as these guys do. I do more reading of other people's writing, but I find that those details as a reader sometimes, like for example, in a lot of Graeme stories, he has those really obscure details.
Yeah.
And that although they're and maybe it's just my brain, but I find that they're so interesting that it takes me off on a tangent, and then I kind of stop listening to his story for a while because I'm really interested in what he just talked about. So yeah.
What about raccoons?
Yeah. So I sometimes I find that the authors who put too much detail in there, I leave the storyline too many times.
Mm-hmm.
I get sick of the storyline and kind of create my own.
Yeah, there's definitely like a balance you have to play. You know, like you almost want to pick like the least amount of specific details you can to really get that image as crystal clear as you can, I think, without going overboard, so that they get lost in the details.
I think I read from King's like on writing book that he was saying something about like you want to like not overload with details, but you do want to have like those like one, two or three like specific details that'll make the entire picture of the scene or character come alive in the reader's mind. Like if you say it was a little old lady, it's kind of like just, it's just a little old lady. But if you say it was a little old lady with one big mole on her nose that had a little white hair coming out of it, then you kind of get the rest of that little old lady's visual in your mind just from that one little detail. And that can be really effective. That's something I think about too, like a lot, Ian. I'm like, what's the perfect detail in the scene to make that character come alive or that room come alive?
Yeah, it's something that I noticed in my first drafts. Everything's placeholders, so I'm looking for specific details because everything's like basic placeholders when I'm writing. Because I'm thinking more about the plot, not the details, that I'm not painting, the picture quite yet. So that's
Like
usually like a second or third. Yeah.
Anyone, any of you guys have any thoughts? I'm curious, like what you guys are thinking about, or if you're thinking about anything new now, because we've been chatting about writing over the last bit.
Well, I was just while we were in the meeting, just in the back of my head, I was sort of thinking about my experience with writing, and particularly with the sorts of silly, kooky screwball stories that I always seem to end up writing. And like, by the way, before I joined this club, that was not what I usually wrote, but I don't even know what it was that I usually wrote, because before the club, basically, like most of my experience with creative writing was when I was like 13 or 14 years old, when I would suddenly decide that I was writing a novel and it was going to be a huge success, and I would write 3 chapters, never touch it again. So, yeah, that was not my identity as a writer. And then I guess, like, I'm trying to think back how this happened to me. And I honestly can't remember, because I think I just wrote one funny story, and then the next meeting I just happened to write another. And then it just set up a sort of chain reaction of events. And like now I'm like, there's like 8 like really silly stories behind me, and I can't go back now. So this is just sort of who I am now, I guess. But anyways, I was thinking about that, and why exactly I enjoy that. And I think why anyone else who like at least like even tries to write comedy stories, because like I don't know if a lot of people like find it funny, but it strikes my sort of unique weird sense of humor. And I thought the meeting when I first wrote the first of the series of weird stories, I just felt really good for some reason. And I was and later in the evening I just picked it up and read it again. And I was thinking, laughter is just so important to like your mental health, I think, your well-being. And it's fine to just like watch something that someone else has made or read or whatever, however you consume comedy. I don't even know if I have the right to call what I make comedy. It sounds too
Made me laugh.
too classy. It sounds too classy for me. Anyways, and it's great to do that. But if it comes from yourself and you're able to make yourself laugh, that is just, it feels so, in a weird way, empowering almost, and it's so much more rewarding because it's something that's come from you. So yeah, I don't know. I was just
Well put.
ruminating on that.
That's awesome. No, and I think that's what's most important about writing, is like the person you're writing for is a reader just like you a lot of the time. And so, like you said, you're like, I'm not sure if everyone would find it funny, but what you're looking for are those readers like you that will find it funny. And same with everyone else. Like, you're writing work that people like you will enjoy. Like, and it's like, and like, that's kind of like what it's all about. Like making yourself happy and writing what you want. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to just chime in at all on anything at all related to our conversations? Well, it's great to have all of you, and thank you all for sharing your work and like on our podcast and with chatting with us this last like hour and a bit about your work and about your experience writing. I think Ian had a couple just like things that you wanted to say just about like advice for younger writers. We were also wondering if you guys have any advice for writers around your own age too, or other writers who are just getting started, or that just are like, how do you do what you do, and like how do I get to the point of making writing like a part of my life. So if you guys have anything you want to weigh in there, we'd love to hear it for our viewers out there. Sorry?
I mean, I'd have so much. I mean, this writing club in general, right? That's what we do.
Exactly.
But I mean, a couple things. And then I guess this is advice from a myriad of different people, less so my own innovations. But first of all, stop not writing. First thing you do, you write. And again, however you can start that. Again, I liked Hemingway's idea. You start with the truest thing you know and you go from there. Right? Keep your sentences brief. You don't want to be lengthy. You don't want to ramble on. I guess you get into Vonnegut's. And you want to keep it simple. Keep it simple and write what you know. And make it genuine, not melodramatic. Then that way you develop your sincerity, because it's not, again, quoting Vonnegut here, your games with language that going to get the reader's attention, which I struggle with. The sincere story.
Excellent.
My 2 cents, stolen from other writers.
No, I love it. And that's like, I feel like with writing and writers too, like with like stuff like that, like writing is always like passing along the knowledge in some way, form, or another, and quoting each other and sharing it. I love it. Anyone else wanna weigh in with any thoughts?
I'd say try not to over criticize your work.
Totally.
Because like, yeah, if you're reading it over and over again, it just makes you really hate it. Because I don't know, I find that I don't like reading over my work too much by myself. I'd rather read it over once than get someone I trust to read it over with me, because then they can give me like actual feedback and wouldn't be all negative. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it can also be like people will often say like just let it like sit and like marinate for a while before you take another look at it. Like look at it with fresh eyes, not the like overcritical day after eyes. Like leave it for a bit. And yeah, try not to be too hard on yourself either. Definitely.
Yeah, I think you can be critical, but you just got to be gentle with yourself, because, like I said, this is like a emotional toil it takes to write, and it's gonna be forever. You know, you're never gonna get over it. Like I said, Steinbeck still hates his own writing, and he's one of the best writers of all time. It's just like you got to be a little gentle. I think you should be critical if you want to improve, but you can be both gentle and critical.
I think that's where, like Bolu said too, like having like other people that you trust, like looking over your over your writing to give you like that feedback and criticism both, so that you can be like, so that you can think of it in both positives and negatives at the same time, and find those like sparkly gems within the piece, but then also be like, maybe this part needs to be a bit stronger, and I'll work on that element a little bit more, and kind of doing both, and not we often want to always just like look at our writing and be like, this sucks, but we gotta strike a balance with ourselves as well. Anyone else?
My advice, one piece of advice I would give to young writers is, if it's ever like in the winter time and you're a runner and it's like November, December, January, and you go for a run and you're wearing like warm clothing, and then you get back inside after it's like an hour, maybe a half hour, wait a minute before getting into the shower, because if you go into the shower immediately after and you've just been outside in the cold, you're going to get a nasty, stinging, itchy rash on your body. No, I'm just kidding. My advice would be try and accumulate a wide repertoire of life experiences. Like, what I'm saying is, put yourself out there, do like all kinds of things, do crazy things, whatever you want. Just make sure you have a really full and like a full life, and you're doing all these different kinds of things, because that is going to be one of the greatest things that you can have in your writing, I think. Because I feel like the most like successful stories that I've like ever written were really based on personal experiences. And you don't need to intimately know something in order to write about it. But even if you have like two things that are completely unrelated, having those kinds of experiences can help you relate to those things. It can help you draw connections, and it can really help you in ways that you really never could have anticipated at first.
That's so important. Yeah. I still struggling to do that because I mean, we probably all are with this last year of just kind of being at home and being like, what do I do? Like, how do I get out there? And like, but like making it work, like I'll still go outside and I'll be like, I need to write about gravel. Okay, and then I like go outside, like touch gravel, and I'm like, this looks weird. This is dumb, but I'm like, it helps the writing be like more authentic or like gives me inspiration as well. And yeah, going out there and doing things and learning new things, trying new things, all that very important. Awesome. Well, thank you all again. I think Ian, did you have anything you wanted to mention as well?
I think that covers it really. It's just really about making a daily habit and a daily like practice and looking at it more as like a practice, that you would with anything else, like playing an instrument or anything, of just regular sitting down intentional practice. Um, but yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah. My other note with like the daily writing practice, because you're really good at those like sitting down and like intentionality. I would also say that give yourself like plenty of breaks and make goals and like practices that work for you and your own habits, and push yourself when you need to be pushed into making those regular habits, but then also like give yourself leniency um and also like let yourself rest too in all things. That goes for writing, real life, school. I think you guys are almost done though, so that's two thumbs up. Summertime. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and that concludes the River Volta show. I do another round of applause for all of you for sharing your wonderful work with us, and thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.